Sawadika. Welcome everyone to Thailand Lab International 2020 and Bio Asia Pacific 2020. Right now you are with us and we are now live broadcast from Biosquare, Bangkok. We would like to welcome everyone to joining with us in this session and we'd like to say hi to all the viewers nationwide and worldwide. This is the time for you to gain your knowledge with the fruitful session with the panel discussion. We would like to start this moment with the panel discussion organized by Prima under the topics of chances favor the prepared mind, crisis management, post-pandemic. All our panelists would like to share his knowledge, insight with everyone. And at the end with this session, we open the floor for Q&A. Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to welcome our honored panelists joining with us upon their stage. First up, we would like to welcome Medical Dr. Shawesan Namwat, Director Field Epidemiology Training Program, FETP, Divisions of Epidemiology, Department of Disease Control. Next up, we are honored to have Dr. Naresh Damlongchai, Co-Chair APEC Life Science Innovation Forum, former CEO of TCELS. Next up, we are honored to have Mr. Pat Sumanapan, Project Manager, Medical Device Technology and Medical Robotics Program, TCELS. We are pleased to welcome Mr. John Clare, Vice President, DKSH Thailand Limited. And pleased to welcome our honor moderator on the stage, Dr. Nara Deshasin, General Manager, Baxter International Inc. And we'd like to pass this floor to our moderator, Dr. Nara. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope my voice is loud and clear. So, thank you, MC host, for the introduction. Given that the introduction has already been done, so I think our esteemed panelists need no further introduction. If we can start, if I may invite Dr. Shawesan to give us a little bit of a brief on the work of the DDC, what's happened or what's been happening in the past 6 months, and also how the DDC has helped Thailand come through or manage this pandemic. So please, Dr. Shawesan, over to you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody in here, and say hi to everybody, countrywide, worldwide. Thank you very much for organizers for let me join this session. I am the chief of the operation section in the Emergency Operation Center, Department of Disease Control. So my responsibility since the start of this epidemic until it becomes the pandemic is the chief of the group of medical doctors who are the disease detective. Actually, the principle is very simple. When there is a new disease, where it comes from, try to find, try to look for the source. And can it spread to other people? At what point we can stop them? But the way to implement in the country level, in the city level, or in the global level, it's not easy. I just would like to remind you the situation here. More than 40 million of cases of COVID-19 already. A number of deaths is more than 1 million. In Southeast Asia, you can see that we have the different level of the number of cases as shown in the different color here. And in Thailand, currently we have the clear picture of the first wave. And we try to control, to prevent the second wave. It seems like we have a good success in this. Compared to other, some of countries in the world, they face the second wave and some countries is even bigger than the first wave. You can see that at the starting, we have the imported cases. The first case on 13 January, and the first case of local transmission is at the end of January, and at that time is a time that WHO declare the public health emergency, and later they declare as the pandemic. In Thailand, nearly 4,000 cases as seen on the screen. Number of deaths is 59. Case fatality rate is mean that it seems like the way we try to look at the severity of the case, how many percent of cases that die. So it's just only 1.6. On average, in the global level, it's about 5%. Okay. The geographical or provincial distribution, you can see here, the majority cases are in Bangkok, Nonthaburi, and urban of suburban of Bangkok. And you can see in the south, the border with Malaysia, and some group of people there at the beginning of the pandemic, they travel back and forth, Thailand, Malaysia, and have the religion activity. So some clusters occur there. So number of cases is shown as the red color. If we look in details this slide, you can see that at the first wave, if you remember, in March, we have the very big cluster. We can say that super spreader event, super spreading event. So it's about the boxing stadium and the nightclub. The visitors to the nightclub that they share the activity, and we found the wave of contact. They just join the same activity and they move to many provinces, more than 60 provinces that related to the boxing stadium epidemic. The tools we choose, the tools we use, this is the principle of public health emergency or even the disaster management. It's about the preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. Mitigation, or sometimes we can say the prevention measure. In Thailand, the preparedness, I think because of we have experience since after the avian flu, the SARS, the MERS, the collective experience there help us a lot. And also we have the group of medical doctors who train for the field epidemiology or the disease detective to try to find the source, and established system before the pandemic. Our team, we have the network throughout the country. Even one cluster of maybe food poisoning, we have the team in the district level to cope with that one, to find what is the source of that food poisoning. So it's like collective experience in different level help us together. This is the tools. When we look in details, not by that framework, we call the 6C, the tools to combat COVID-19 in Thailand. The first one is capture or case detection under the screening at the point of entry. Because at the beginning, we concerns of the cases from Wuhan, from China. So the port of entry is very crucial. Someone may think, oh, the thermometer scanner in the airport is not an effective way, but it proves that this one measure that we should use to find the new case. And the second one, when we detect, we have a case management. Under the team of experts, try to generate the guideline for case management. Okay, and contact tracing is really important in the different area. We have to have the team work concert together. Communication and also community participation. And with the coordination information center, this is the real key of the activities we have done. These two slides is the thing that WHO come to evaluate us in Thailand. What are the background or the factors contribute to the success? Even the health system that the people in different society level can access to the care, to screening, diagnosis, and treatment. And also this one, we link to the building capacity, not only the medical doctor, but the public health official and also by the policy leader, also that let us work in our technical that support the evidence that support to that. So the challenges, the last slide, my last slide, for the Department of Disease Control is about the second wave. When it comes, that is a real challenge, and can we control it in a proper way? Because we need to have we have the second challenge is about the balance of interventions of disease control and economy challenges that everybody in the society becomes concerned more and more. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chwetsan, for your insights as to how the DDC and the role that the DDC has played in helping Thailand as a country control the spread of the infection, the pandemic. So next up, we have Dr. Nared. Dr. Nared was the former CEO of TCELS. He comes with a very, very profound and deep knowledge on the public sector. So may I invite Dr. Nared to give us a few words and share some of his experience within the public sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nara. I'll try to limit it to a few words. Well, from the public organization point of view, I would like to talk about the big picture. And I think someone said this morning that in the previous session that eventually COVID-19 will go away. And I believe that it will be like that. But crisis will never go away. We will always, as a fact of life, be facing and have to manage crisis all the time. In fact, if you look at the World Economic Forum Global Risk Report, they produce this report every year. You can see that maybe, there are bigger waves than COVID-19, not only in terms of diseases, but also climate change and other big things, cybersecurity, for example. And these risks will always create crisis. My point will be, what should the government do? And I think I learned from Dr. Chuet's slide, given that there are some formula for dealing with the crisis in terms of disease control. And from the big picture, the government point of view, I see the weakest link where there will be, room for improvement. And you talk about mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. Yeah, okay. I think the weakest link is in the preparedness from the policy point of view, because preparedness takes time, commitment, and resources. And, if there's no threat, it's perhaps in human nature that, we don't prepare too much. And I think that is a mistake. So this is where, from the policy point of view, we have room to improve. I also would like to say something about the budget, because every year, trillions of baht are spent in the form of national budget. And if we see how it works, in October, from October every year, this year it was delayed a little bit, we have this national budget cycle. And for crisis management, even though you might say that, it's integrated already in the national budget, but the government always have this central budget, they call ngop klang, for contingency, something that might happen. And usually the thing that happened would be flood, which is happening right now, drought, or other things, and disease is one. The problem with the central budget is that it is governed by the rules, the regulation, and the laws, everything just like, or even stricter than the annual budget. So it's very difficult to use. And sometimes it doesn't come in time. And I think we have to figure out a better budgeting system to manage crisis that I said certainly will happen. The next thing is the people. And here is often a mistake when we think about, let's prepare people and then do the training. that does not help, or it has helped very little, because we still locked into the same old mindset and the same old habit or culture, whatever you call it. So there has to be a new way of manage people to be more flexible in times of crisis. They can manage crisis better if they are given more power, or they are empowered, for example. So it's a systemic thing rather than skill. Another thing is about the infrastructure. I remember I work a lot with Japan. And in Japan last year, they were preparing for Tokyo Olympics, which unfortunately didn't turn out. But when they prepare for Tokyo Olympics, they were also preparing for, what about or what if in case there will be bioterrorist attack or terrorist attack, which hospital will, be allocated, and they have to have a centralized information to know at this specific time, hour or minute, how many beds in which hospital are available in times of crisis, like mass people are infected or harmed by bomb or something. So that kind of system they already built in Japan, and this is infrastructure thinking. And unfortunately, I don't see that thing happen in Thailand, not yet, but maybe starting, because in Thailand, one of the big issue for us is the referral system from one hospital to another, and all the information that goes with, and the right of the patient on what insurance or program you're with. So these things are, I think, the job of the government to be prepared and to help prepare in the normal times in order to be able to manage in the crisis time. If I may allow for one more minute, there's also room to improve on the public-private partnership, the PPP. We have been having 2 PPP laws in Thailand. The first one is very bad. Now we had the second one a few years ago, but still not very good. And even though it improved, but it's still based on the lack of trust between the government and the private sector. So when we have PPP, public-private partnership, it's very difficult in practice to have an efficient working relationship or contractual relationship between the public and the private. So we don't have time to go into details, but I think that for crisis management at the national level or regional or even provincial level, PPP in the future will play a very important part, and I hope that we have a more suitable system in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nared, for those wonderful insights. I think hopefully in more or less 10 minutes, Dr. Nared took us through infrastructure, attitude to preparation, budget and PPP. I think if we had another 2 days, I would be very keen to hear more of your perspectives. Thank you. So up next, we have Kun Siripat. Kun Siripat is the project manager for the Medical Device Technology and the Medical Robotics Program of TCELS. I hope that in this session, we'll see a perspective of probably our youngest speaker up here with the most hair. So please enlighten us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nara. So I guess actually it's going to be an elaboration furthermore from my former boss, who's sitting here with me today, but from more of a within organization point of view. This is our Fight COVID version of TCELS logo, where we had our easy content team designed during the peak of the crisis. When we went through the coming of the COVID wave at TCELS, we actually had this superstructure created on top of our normal organization chart called TCELS United. So normally we have the back office taking care of finance and purchasing and planning other stuff, and then we have the innovation and academic arm of the TCELS. But Dr. Narate initiated TCELS United, which is another structure where we relocated our people into these teams based on functionalities and expertise, and also on a volunteer basis. I think this is thanks partly to the fact that we have not that many people. We are quite a small to medium-sized organization, and also our most important asset at TCELS is our people. So this is our crisis management at that time. And I was involved largely on the Should Go team. We have these 8 teams formed during the peak of COVID wave. Should Go, Help Desk, BCP, Mailbe platform, that's like a matching platform for innovation and users, sort of a distribution. Easy content, family love, taking care of making sure everyone is well and healthy and safe at TCELS. And medical AI and digital wellness actually formed later when we saw more and more applications coming, both domestically and internationally. So I was heavily involved in the Should Go team, medical AI and digital wellness, where I'll talk about the work that we did later. And our management level actually had statements laid out why they created TCELS United and what mindset they would like us to take on during the crisis. Basically, well, in a way, it was a crisis, but TCELS mission made us stand at, say, conveniently, in a convenient situation to actually match our mission, our prior goals with public effort to relieve the COVID situation. So we use this to actually up-level our organizational performance level, and also encourage everyone to maybe express or show their potentials that normally wouldn't have been, expressed in the normal working environment. And also we did everything fast and without fear of failure. So that was the mindset that our executives really encouraged us to take on. And with TCELS United, we brainstormed and we identified our new priorities very quickly. And through our existing mechanisms at TCELS, we co-research, we can fund research, we can consult and partner with private sector to develop research from lab to the users. So we could get a lot of medical equipment or disinfection equipment ready in a few months' time. And that would normally not happen very quickly. The normal time frame takes much longer. This is the project that I was overseeing at that time. We gave consultation, sorry, it's partly in Thai, for testing of medical devices for relief of COVID situation, like UVC sterilizer or smart coating material for use with medical supplies, clothing supplies, antivirus smart coating, or reusable gowns for medical personnel. So this is the kind of project that we did, and I guess this is my point of view, but there were lessons that we learned in hindsight, looking back. I realized that a lot of processes that used to take much longer actually could have been expedited much faster. But although after the wave passed, we also learned that back clearing of those expedited process could be lengthy as well.
You're complaining that some more work during work from home, huh?
Yeah, well, I guess that's a personal take, but and also we had actually more and more, many more meetings made possible by all the digital technologies, and also this sense of urgency that people took on during that time. And also, in hindsight, we gained valuable inputs that can be used to update BCP for our organization. Like, what if we would have another superstructure, if another crisis come, which teams would be useful or helpful or, yeah, or can be improved. And finally, this is important. I think we rushed through a lot of development of new prototypes, and I also heard this from many SMEs in medical device sector that they would not jump in so fast to invest in this because it takes time for a lot of health technologies, especially the deep ones, and yeah, so we kind of learned that backward after the crisis. So this would be a good preparation, I guess, in terms of mindset preparing and also maybe thinking in terms of infrastructure and budgeting. And yeah, I actually prepare some work that we did on keeping us informed about the digital health and AI technology during that time when a lot of applications came out. And this quickly. So with many more papers being published, like maybe I think like about 2,000 in a few months' time after December, and we saw like logistic applications coming out from young developers trying to distribute masks, sanitizers, and other things. So we formed our medical AI team and wrote this proposal that we would like to study how AI is, and also big data is helping with the situation. We would like to evaluate and assess the use of the technology in the way like they evaluate other non-pharmaceutical interventions. Wearing masks, social distancing, contact tracing. And right now we are at the stage of trying to mapping the control measures, either issued by the Ministry of Public Health or กระทรวงมหาดไทย I'm not sure. Internal Affairs, Ministry of Internal Affairs. And after mapping and assessment, we will hold a conference for scenario building and trying to forecast and do foresight management in order to get a policy recommendation in this area to our ministry and then the government, hopefully. And that will happen around the end of this year. So this is a preliminary result and it's not exhaustive. It might not be classified correctly, but we collected all the applications that were available or are still being used right now in Thailand in terms of tracking, quarantine, monitoring, self-monitoring, things like that. EDDC care from the Department of Disease Control. And we are trying to classify which of them are AI-powered or which of them are just making use of data analytics and how big the data they gather. I know they face challenges because the cases went down a lot, so the volume of data coming in just decreased a lot as well recently. Okay, and this is like I mentioned, we would like to assess the measures that are technology powered in ways that, like you try to predict like how effective mask wearing is, but given the nature of innovation, it's not as clear cut like established service where you can measure quality, perception versus expectation of customers, things like that, or how fit in it is to the clinical workflow, yeah, within the hospital. So we're coming up with a criteria as well. Okay, this is too small. So last one, sorry for taking up quite a long time. in researching this, and Dr. Nared mentioned this morning, it should not be trivialized, the use of technology. We know that it is helpful, it makes many things faster, but there are issues that are concerns accompanying these types of applications, like say tracking data, how you think about that versus the risk of being under surveillance from the government, for example, or data protection and privacy, or digital divide that usually translate to wealth divide as well. So these are the things that I'd like to put in our final report on the project as part of policy recommendation. Yes. So I think that's what I prepared for today.
Wow, thank you. I think that was, in that presentation, I think certainly, thank you, first of all, Mr. We saw the real DNA that's been passed on, obviously, from Dr. Nared now to Kun Suripat. I personally, myself, I really appreciated the holistic view of how TCELS is approaching this pandemic. Certainly, you know, it's been very helpful for me to see the fact that there is a superstructure in place for dealing with this pandemic. We are talking about prepared minds and preparedness. And so medical technology, AI, digital wellness, big data, again, brilliant to see that that's also connecting back with some of the DDC data that Dr. Shwedsan spoke about earlier. I'm also very glad that the younger generation are picking up the right keywords of speed and mindset, failing fast, failing quickly, and keeping reiterating and reinventing the process. Because in our view, it's right, this is not trivial. And as Dr. Nared said, this is not going to go away. Crisis will always happen. So with that, we've gone sort of from a macro view, from universal to global, to now national. And next up, we have Kun John Clare. John heads up DKSH. I'm sure you know the company for many things you consume inside the fridge, but they also put things into hospitals. John is here today to talk to us about the digital supply chain and the physical supply chain of medical products, and also how they have been impacted, and to a certain extent, the industry has been severely impacted by this pandemic. So please, John.
Good, thank you, Nara. You know, before I get into some of the details, maybe what I'll do is I'll start off by talking a little bit about what we do at DKSH and what our company is about. We do about $2 billion of sales in healthcare products here in Thailand alone. Healthcare products for us means anything from medical devices, that can be cardiovascular implants, neurovascular implants, spine implants, all the way through oncology to cough and cold remedies, and whatever you could really imagine that doctors, hospitals, pharmacies need in the country. So within our DNA as a company, it's very much something that we look at to make sure we can service Thai patients at any time. So we really have no disruptions, we have no issues that would affect a patient's life. And this is especially coming out of the med device part that we have. You know, if you run med device and you have a couple of hours delay, you know, the patient might be in trouble. So you cannot afford delays, and you really build a culture in the organization of uninterrupted supplies to the medical community. So look, in terms of risk management, in terms of preparation throughout COVID, what have we done? Clearly, you know, business continuity plans are a key part of being prepared. But nothing can prepare you for a black swan event, yeah? I mean, COVID is a black swan. No one would have predicted that, and no BCP in the world would have predicted COVID and the extent it has taken throughout the world. We might have expected a pandemic in a country, something like that, but not of a global scale. But what these business continuity plans do is build a culture within an organization that everyone thinks about what do you do if. And it leads to a documented process, it leads to a discussion, it leads to a cross-functional leadership discussion where everyone in the team really thinks about what would you do and how would you help each other in fixing challenges as they emerge. If I look back, I mean, in the last 10 years we had two, if I can call them black swan events. We had the flooding in Bangkok in 2011. At that time, our BCPs didn't foresee a flooding. But nevertheless, we overcame that situation. We actually even deployed boats to deliver pharmaceutical and med device products to hospitals. We never thought we'll need a boat to deliver products, but our trucks couldn't get out and so on and so forth. But because we built these plans and the culture of preparedness, I think we were ready for the worst case. When it came to COVID this time around, again, we didn't know how quickly this was evolving. Like many companies in the world, we were observing what is going to happen. But very early on, we got disease control specialists into our process. So we had a company that was specialized in advising disease, so international SOS, that was specialized in managing diseases in crisis environments. And put this into context, we had that in our distribution center. The reason was not that we had issues in the distribution center, but we wanted to make sure we can continue running the operation without an interruption 24/7 over the many months to come. The worst thing for us would have been we have one employee that has COVID and we have to shut down a site which supplies not just for us business, but to all the hospitals in Thailand, all the doctors in Thailand, all the pharmacies in Thailand. We couldn't afford that. So we really invested into resources and PPE and frankly, I think we did it a little over the top, but we came out of the crisis really in an uninterrupted way. We had no interruptions in terms of transport, in terms of distribution. So really taking care of Thai patients has been sort of the thing that keeps us going throughout the entire crisis, yeah?
Thank you, Khun John, for those perspectives. I think it's certainly great to hear from an industry player, particularly an industry player that takes care of so much of the market. I think the key words I took away from that really also as an industry player as well is uninterrupted supplies. I think that is absolutely paramount. We can have the best monitoring systems, we can have the best hospital infrastructures, but without supplies getting to the hospitals, the medical community at the right time, I think we still end up with a disaster. So I hope DKSH will invest in boats because maybe with the rain that's coming this weekend, you might need it. On the business continuity plan about building a culture for preparing, I think this connects very, very well with what Dr. Nared said right at the beginning, because unfortunately we are faced with a situation where, and I quote, no threat, no preparation. This becomes an absolute disaster for every industry player. And healthcare as an industry is a chain. So we are only as strong as the weakest link in that chain. And across that entire chain, all the way through from the DDC to distributor to company, we are sat in exactly that order. You can see that the preparedness absolutely has to exist in every level of what's happening in the country and to a certain degree in the world. So thank you, John. I think now
if I may,
sure.
Dr. Nared, if I can just take a couple of minutes, I'd like to build on something that Dr. Nared said earlier on, right? I mean, if we look into the future, there is going to be more such situations, right? In the last 10 years, we had two events, flooding, COVID, and Dr. Nared just mentioned earlier on that there are studies. This is not the end, right? So being prepared is something that's absolutely critical. I think as organizations, we need to look at our supply chain in a very different way than we have looked in the past. A lot of companies these days are built around global manufacturing, one single global site, one single global source for one API, and or things like that. And when you have a situation like COVID, that's very, very risky. So I think we're going to see some trends that will break down some of the pillars in supply chain. And when I talk about supply chain, I talk about end-to-end, really from manufacturing, from the detailed source all the way through to the finished product. I think we'll see a lot more digitization as well as organizations, you know, where COVID has taught us that we can't do business in the same way as we used to in the past, right? I mean, one of the biggest challenge was actually not for us in distribution. One of the biggest challenge for us was in engaging with customers. Our customers are doctors, pharmacists, and suddenly we couldn't go to the hospital anymore. We couldn't see them face to face, and all our business, and this is the industry, right, has been built around face-to-face interaction. I think this has really dramatically shifted now, and I think you really see a different approach to digitalization and engaging between customers and companies. If I look at the number of digital tools that are available these days between companies like ourselves and the healthcare sector, it's huge. We've rolled out 3 different tools, big tools, that are servicing this need in the sales teams, customer interactions, client interactions. So, yeah, I think there's really some big changes coming along there too, yeah?
You know, thank you. And I think you've touched on a very important point, which is the digitization of the entire end-to-end process of healthcare. I'm also glad that you brought up the manufacturing piece, because something that I would have liked to have talked about, but fortunately for Baxter, we have more than 49 manufacturing sites worldwide, so we're a little bit more relieved there. But okay, so I think we're into a little bit to the Q&A session. So if I may start firing some of the ones that I have. My first one will actually go to Dr. Nared first, and then to Dr. Shwetsan. So. Dr. Nared, my apologies. We prepared some questions, but actually some of the things that you discussed today was of much more interest to me. So I'm gonna divert a little bit from my script. You talked a lot about PPP and budget allocation. Now, I think this is a question that plagues not only the Thai government, actually most governments around the world, and even more so during election times. What's your view on how we can actually optimize budget and budget allocation vis-a-vis working also with the private sector, so that we can actually achieve an optimum level of engagements between the public and the private sector, and the roles that we can both play in order to ensure that we can become better prepared for the next crisis? As you said, you know, we'll see more. We just don't know what the next one is yet. Thank you.
Thank you for the unprepared question. I would like to think that, in a way, to have some small crisis is actually good. It's like you build up your immunity, and then when the big one comes, you get ready. Well, this is the theory, but we don't have that luxury. At least with the COVID-19, we didn't. And I think. So to build up this, let's say, strength or a better resource allocation system to deal with the crisis, it has to start with the thinking that if anything can happen, the government alone will never be able to do the job. We have to work together. PPP, that's what I said when I talk about. And if you look, actually there are some examples, and I will take one from the life science industry. When United States was hit by, anthrax, 2001, right? And then at that time, there was a threat for bioterrorism. So what the government decided, that they after a long debate, they issue a new law, which is called the BARDA. BARDA thinking is that, okay, we need to have vaccines or drugs to deal with the bioterrorists in a short time. And the government look around, Well, they did have national labs and facilities, but the majority of them belong to the private sector. So what they did was, okay, we will then allocate some budget to the private manufacturers, even without threat or crisis. And then it became a new granting system. Money flows from the government to private sector. Of course, there was a lot of debate, opposition, but they pushed through anyway. And maybe partially because of the crisis was very close. Now, there's a clause that, okay, the government fund manufacturers to manufacture and sell it in the market, commercial market. But when anything happened, like if the United States is attacked by bioterrorists or if there's a pandemic happen, those facilities that funded by the US government will have to produce vaccines or drugs that is in need for public use. And this is a one example of a new way to think about how the government can actually allocate budget to the private companies with a good cause for public security, but they don't have to build new factories all the time and maintain them, even though, when the facility is in the hand of the government, they're not always very efficient. They can't sell well. Leave it to the private. But when the need comes, they can take back. So this is just one example of thinking of how we might be able to develop our system to be able to flexibly manage with whatever crisis that come.
Okay, thank you very much. So my next question actually will go to Dr. Shawetsan. I think you've given us a very nice overview of how we managed to control the imports in the 6 Cs, but if you could attribute the most important factor or the most important critical success factor that's made Thailand so successful at controlling disease imports, what would that be?
Normally when we talk about the incident command system or emergency operation system, we have 3 things: staff, and system. We need to prepare all aspects about the workforce, about staff. Staff is mean the technology, the place, and the systems. I think the most important is about the system because it links everything and it ensures that we look in a proper way in every aspect and it leads to a good preparedness. The proper time to activate the EOC, like when we just heard the confirmed news from China, just during the New Year time, on the 3rd January, we start the screening at the airport.
Okay, thank you. ขอบคุณครับ Next question, Kun Suripat. Obviously, I think you gave us a very big overview, and I personally love the DNA of TCELS and what they're doing. But in particular, AI and robotics. I mean, I think we were only scratching at the surface. But could you give us a little bit of an insight? What is the next big thing that TCELS see in terms of AI and the role of digital that will help us control the spread of this pandemic and be better prepared?
So first, I have to say that I'm no deep expert on AI, but we studied this together with our teams. But I was researching the fields that AI could be of use in helping solve the pandemic situation, and I think the one area that I was interested in is that companies like Microsoft and I don't remember, like Institute for AI or Alliance or something, they came together quickly and then tried to use text mining or data analytics to actually help you read the papers that came out. So that's one area that I think could be very helpful because just like social media, I mean, I'm even considered old compared to the more fluent generation right now, and with all the data flooding in, I would think in terms of programmers, they would like to have helper help them analyze these data. And with thousands or even tens of thousands of papers coming out so quickly, people did study the dynamic of this pandemic. And I know that some companies already use AI to help them analyze or screen these papers. So that's one area that is still in infancy, I think. But it's very empowering to in the hands of whoever has this. Maybe scary on one side.
Thank you. So I think, robotic researchers, if we've got any researchers or academics here, you're about to lose your job soon. So my last question goes to John. John, given that, you control so much of the supply chain, for the supplies here in Thailand, actually in the region, if there was one learning or one key takeaway from this that you could share perhaps with the audience, what would that be?
I'd probably have to say, be prepared. Really, create some plans and anticipate. But I think most important of all is really creating a culture within the company. I've said that a couple of times earlier on. I think unless you really create a culture within the leadership team to really look at, and this is not about a crisis, this is about the day-to-day activities, right? We as a business can't afford a patient not to get an implant when he's on the operating table. So we need to make sure that, we can service 24/7 in an uninterrupted way. So I think really coming up with BCPs, plans, ingraining that in the culture in the organization, I think that's really the most important part, yeah?
Okay, thank you. So I think, look, part of a very good session also requires good time management, and I think we are exactly on time. So look, first I'd like to say thank you to all of our distinguished speakers. Thank you very, very much. I hope you've learned a lot. I've learned a great deal, and please do look up any of these ladies or gentlemen or ourselves, even Prima. Thank you for supporting this event. We look forward to further discussions and engagements with, the medical community, the academic community, and industry. Thank you very much. ขอบคุณครับ
ขอบคุณค่ะ It's a good talk.